During brunch, my mom looked at me and said, "We're just being nice inviting you. Don't fool yourself into thinking you actually matter." My uncle chuckled. My dad didn't say a word. I took a sip of my coffee, gave a quick nod, and left without making a scene. 2 weeks later, the cabin they all cherished was sold. I closed the family's joint credit line, canceled every shared subscription, and waited. That night, my phone lit up with messages from the family group chat. Then I got the first call from, "Can you imagine looking your own mother dead in the eyes at brunch and hearing her say, 'Don't think you matter,' while your uncle laughs and your father says nothing?" That was the exact moment my entire world shattered, and I knew, with a chilling clarity, that I had to unleash a quiet, calculated storm. You see, on paper, we looked like the picture-perfect American family. My parents, Diana and Thomas Carter, built their wealth in real estate. We lived in this sprawling colonial house in Connecticut, took luxury vacations twice a year, and, honestly, we never, ever worried about money. But beneath that polished, gleaming exterior, our family dynamics were anything but perfect. They were, in fact, incredibly broken. From a young age, I just had this innate aptitude for numbers. While my siblings, Kyle and Amanda, followed my parents into these flashier careers, Kyle became a surgeon, Amanda a corporate attorney, I pursued finance. I graduated with honors from Wharton, built a wildly successful career as a wealth manager, and, ironically, became the person who handled my family's incredibly complex financial portfolio. I mean, the irony was almost laughable, right? The cabin in Vermont? That was the first major purchase I made with my inheritance from my grandma Ruth. She was the only one who truly saw me, truly got me. She left me a substantial sum with specific instructions to create something meaningful. The family had always talked about wanting a vacation property, so I found the perfect lakeside cabin. 3 bedrooms, stunning views, a dock for fishing, everything they'd ever mentioned wanting. I put it solely in my name for liability reasons, but everyone used it freely, like it was communal property. It was their cabin, even though it was legally mine. Then, when my parents started complaining about managing multiple credit cards and accounts, I stepped in again. I created a family shared credit line. I organized everything, negotiated excellent terms with the bank using my professional connections, and made sure every single family member had access to funds when they needed them. I managed the payments, tracked the expenses, and ensured everything ran smoothly. My financial expertise saved them thousands in interest and fees every single year. And yet, despite all of this, I remained the afterthought at family gatherings. My opinion was the last sought, if it was even considered at all. Can you imagine? At our annual family meeting to discuss investments, my suggestions were often dismissed, only to be later proposed by my father or brother and suddenly deemed brilliant. It was infuriating. There was the Christmas when they literally forgot to get me a gift until the last minute, resulting in a hastily purchased generic scarf, while my siblings received thoughtful, personalized presents. Or the time my parents rescheduled our traditional Sunday dinner because Carl had a minor scheduling conflict, but refused to change it when I had an important work presentation. My career successes were minimized, brushed aside. When I was promoted to senior wealth advisor at one of Boston's most prestigious firms, managing portfolios worth billions, my mother's response was, "That's nice, dear. Did you hear Carl is being considered for chief of surgery?" My clients included celebrities and tech moguls, yet at family gatherings, my parents introduced me as simply working at a bank. Amanda, 2 years my junior, followed my parents' example. She'd casually dismiss my financial advice while simultaneously asking me to review her investment portfolio. Kyle, the golden child, barely acknowledged my professional expertise while relying on me to manage his considerable savings. Even my 26-year-old cousin Jenna, who lived in the guest house rent-free thanks to arrangements I made, joined in the subtle put-downs. Only my Aunt Patricia occasionally defended me, having experienced similar treatment as the family outsider who married in. But even she remained silent during the worst episodes, unwilling to truly challenge my mother's authority. I tried everything to earn their respect. I hosted elaborate dinner parties at my downtown condo, only to have them criticize my choice of wine. I offered financial workshops for the family, creating personalized investment strategies that grew their wealth substantially, only to have them credit market conditions for the success. I bought thoughtful gifts, planned surprise celebrations, and bent over backward to accommodate their schedules. Nothing worked. I remained the family utility, useful when needed, invisible when not. The family accountant, the convenient ATM, and, sometimes, the occasional punchline. Each dismissal chipped away at me. But I held on to the hope that someday they'd recognize my worth. That hope, fragile as it was, sustained me through years of subtle cruelty. Until that Sunday brunch changed everything. The Sunday brunches were my mother's idea. Families should see each other regularly, she insisted, though these gatherings felt more like obligations than celebrations. Still, every month I arrived at my parents' house with a smile, bringing fresh pastries from the artisanal bakery near my condo and a determined optimism that maybe this time would be different. That particular Sunday in May seemed promising at first. The weather was perfect. Mom had set up brunch on the stone patio, the table dressed with her favorite floral tablecloth and grandmother's china. Everyone seemed to be in good spirits. "Rebecca, you made it," my mother said, kissing my cheek. She smelled of Chanel No. 5 and mimosas. "We're just about to discuss the summer plans." I placed the bakery box on the sideboard. "I brought those almond croissants everyone likes." "How thoughtful," she said without enthusiasm, already turning away. Kyle was telling us about his conference in Switzerland. The whole family might go to make a vacation of it. I took my usual seat, pouring myself coffee. Kyle dominated the conversation, detailing the medical conference and the extended European trip they were apparently planning. "We could stay a week in Geneva, then perhaps venture to the Italian lakes," my mother said excitedly. "Thomas, we could revisit that charming village we discovered on our honeymoon." I sipped my coffee, listening as they outlined this elaborate family vacation. No one looked in my direction or asked about my availability. I cleared my throat gently. "That sounds wonderful. When in August is the conference?" "I should check my calendar." The table fell silent. My mother's perfectly shaped eyebrows arched slightly. "Oh, Rebecca," she said with a small laugh, "we hadn't really thought. Well, it's primarily a family trip." I felt my cheeks flush. "I am family," I said quietly. My Uncle Richard snorted into his mimosa. Amanda suddenly became very interested in buttering her toast. Kyle looked embarrassed, but said nothing. "Of course you are, technically, my mother continued, her voice taking on that particular tone she used when explaining obvious things to children. "But this trip is really centered around Kyle's achievement. Plus, we'll be using the family jet and there's limited space." The family jet that I had recommended they lease, the jet whose financing I had arranged. "I see," I said, keeping my voice level. "I thought since I'm managing the family accounts that fund these trips, I might be included in the planning." My mother's smile tightened. She placed her napkin beside her plate with deliberate care, a warning sign I'd learned to recognize from childhood. "Rebecca, let's be honest here. We're just trying to be nice, including you in these brunches and occasional holidays. Don't think you matter to the actual decision-making in this family." The words hit like physical blows, each syllable precise and cutting. I felt my stomach drop and a cold sensation spread through my chest. Around the table, various reactions played out. Uncle Richard laughed openly. Amanda had the decency to look uncomfortable, but remained silent. My father studied his plate with sudden interest, refusing to meet my eyes or defend me. Diana, Aunt Patricia murmured, "That's a bit harsh," but without conviction. Kyle cleared his throat. "Mom, come on." "What?" my mother said defensively. "We all know Rebecca is just better with the numbers. She's not exactly the fun one in the family. I'm simply being honest." I sat perfectly still. Years of practice helped me maintain a neutral expression while internally crumbling. The brunch continued around me, conversation shifting to vacation rentals in Lake Como, as if the casual demolition of my place in the family had been nothing more than a minor conversational hiccup. I reached for my coffee cup with a steady hand, taking a small sip of the now lukewarm liquid. I carefully placed it back on its saucer, folded my napkin, and rose from the table. "I just remembered an appointment," I said to no one in particular. "Enjoy your brunch." No one protested my departure. My father gave a distracted wave without looking up. My mother was already showing Amanda pictures of Italian villas on her phone. The drive home to my downtown condo was a blur. Somehow, I navigated the 20 minutes on autopilot, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. It wasn't until I closed my apartment door behind me that I finally broke. I sank to the floor, back against the door, and let the tears come. Not delicate, ladylike tears my mother might approve of, but ugly, body-shaking sobs that left me gasping for air. My cat, Luna, approached cautiously, sensing something was wrong, and pressed herself against my side. "They don't want me," I whispered to her, stroking her soft fur. "They've never wanted me." The truth I'd been running from for years sat heavily in my chest. The family I'd been desperately trying to please saw me as nothing more than a convenient resource. My expertise was valuable. I was not. My services were essential. My presence was tolerable. I was the family calculator, useful but disposable, appreciated for function rather than essence. As the light shifted across my living room floor, I remained there, emptying years of suppressed hurt and disappointment. When the tears finally subsided, I felt hollowed out, but somehow lighter. The painful clarity of my mother's words had stripped away the last of my illusions. Something had fundamentally changed inside me. I was done trying to earn love that would never be freely given. The next morning, I called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years. I needed space to think clearly, away from the demands of clients and colleagues. I made coffee, settled at my dining table with Luna curled in my lap, and opened my laptop. First, I reviewed my personal accounts and investments, separate from the family finances I managed. I'd always been conservative with my own money, building a substantial nest egg that could support me comfortably for years if necessary. Financial independence had been my security blanket in a family that made me feel perpetually insecure. Then I pulled up the legal documents for the family cabin. I'd purchased it 5 years ago with my inheritance. And although everyone used it as communal property, the deed listed only my name. I'd paid all taxes, maintenance costs, and insurance from my personal accounts. Legally, it was mine alone. Next came the shared credit line. I'd established it under my primary account with family members as authorized users. The legal responsibility and liability rested solely with me, though I'd been faithfully using family funds to cover the payments. I downloaded statements from the past year, noting how each family member used their access. Kyle frequently charged expensive restaurants and designer clothes. Amanda primarily used it for her BMW payments and spa treatments. My parents charged everything from groceries to their extensive wine collection to household stuff. I created a spreadsheet detailing every financial service I provided to the family, managing their investment portfolio worth millions, filing their complex tax returns, negotiating their insurance policies, handling property management for their various real estate holdings, and coordinating with their estate attorney, services that would cost them hundreds of thousands annually if they hired professionals. By lunchtime, the picture was crystal clear. My family didn't just benefit from my expertise. They were utterly dependent on it. Their comfortable lifestyle, their financial security, even their precious European vacations, all relied on my careful management. The irony was staggering. They dismissed me while simultaneously needing me more than they realized. I took a break to call my friend Stephanie, a corporate attorney I'd met at Harvard Business School. We'd remained close through the years, and she was one of the few people who truly understood my family dynamics. "They said what?" she exclaimed after I recounted the brunch incident. "Becca, that's beyond disrespectful. That's emotional abuse." "I know," I said quietly. "I've been making excuses for them for years." "So, what are you going to do?" she asked firmly. I hesitated, then voiced the thought that had been forming since morning. "I'm thinking of separating myself financially completely." "Good," she said. "It's long overdue. What can I do to help? Can you reuse some documents for me? I want to make sure I'm proceeding legally." "Send them over. And Rebecca, you deserve better than this. You always have." After our call, I drafted a comprehensive plan. First, I would contact a real estate agent about selling the cabin. Second, I would close the shared credit line after transferring any legitimate family business expenses to my parents' personal accounts. Third, I would transfer management of the family investment portfolio to my colleague Jackson with a 1-month transition period during which I would document everything. The subscription services were another matter. Over the years, I'd used my cards to simplify family payments for everything from streaming services to wine club memberships to Kyle's gym and Amanda's meal delivery service. All would need to be canceled or transferred. I spent the afternoon making calls and sending emails, setting my plan in motion. Each step was methodical, professional, and completely legal. I wasn't taking anything that wasn't mine, or refusing to return anything that belonged to them. I was simply removing myself from the equation. With each call, each signature, each confirmation, I felt something shifting inside me. The girl who had spent her life seeking approval was being replaced by a woman who understood her value, with or without family validation. The hurt remained, a tender bruise on my heart, but alongside it grew something new, self-respect. That evening, I called my Aunt Patricia. Though not always supportive, she had occasionally shown me genuine kindness, and I felt she deserved advanced notice. "I've decided to make some changes following yesterday's brunch," I explained after pleasantries. "Oh, honey, your mother didn't mean it the way it sounded," she said immediately, defaulting to the family pattern of excusing Diana's behavior. She meant exactly what she said. "Aunt Patricia, it's okay. It helped me see things clearly." "What kind of changes?" she asked cautiously. "I'm disentangling myself financially from the family. You won't be affected directly, but you might hear about it from others. I wanted you to understand it's not done out of malice." There was a long pause before she spoke again, her voice softer. "I understand more than you might think, Rebecca. Do what you need to do." As I prepared for bed that night, I felt the first flickers of doubt. Was I overreacting? Would this irreparably damage my relationship with my family? But then I remembered my mother's words, my uncle's laughter, my father's silence. The pattern would never change unless I changed it first. I set my phone to Do Not Disturb, curled up with Luna, and for the first time in years, slept deeply and dreamlessly. The decision was made. The plan was in motion. There was no turning back now. The real estate market in Vermont was surprisingly active for May. My agent, Melissa, called with exciting news just 3 days after listing the cabin. "I have multiple interested parties," she said. "One couple is particularly motivated. They're offering $15,000 above asking price for a quick cash sale." I sat at my desk, staring out at the Boston skyline. "They understand the property is being sold as is, fully furnished?" "Yes, that's actually part of the appeal for them. They want a turnkey vacation home they can start using immediately. The cabin my family thought of as theirs would belong to strangers within weeks. The place where we'd spent Thanksgivings and summer weekends, where Kyle had taught his son to fish, where my father claimed to do his best thinking." I felt a momentary pang of guilt, quickly followed by the searing memory of my mother's dismissive voice. "Don't think you matter." "Let's accept the offer," I said firmly. "How quickly can we close?" 2 weeks if everything goes smoothly." "Perfect. Send over the paperwork." After hanging up, I walked to my kitchen and poured a glass of wine. This was really happening. The first domino was falling. Part of me had expected to feel victorious, but instead I felt a complex mixture of sadness and relief. I wasn't enjoying hurting my family. I was simply refusing to be hurt by them any longer. The next day, I visited my bank to handle the shared credit line. The personal banker, James, had worked with me for years and greeted me warmly. "What can I do for you today, Miss Carter?" "I need to close the family shared credit line," I said, sliding over the account information. His eyebrows rose slightly. "The entire line? This is a substantial account." "Yes, the entire line. I've already transferred any recurring legitimate business expenses to other accounts. I'd like to give the authorized users 48 hours notice before full closure. Of course, we'll send formal notifications. May I ask if there's been a problem with the service?" I smiled politely. No problem with the bank at all, just a change in family financial arrangements. James nodded professionally, though curiosity lingered in his eyes. He processed the paperwork, and I signed where indicated. Another domino down. Back at my office, I drafted emails to all the subscription services: Netflix, Hulu, HBO, Apple Music, Spotify Premium, Wine Club, Whiskey Club, Cheese of the Month, Amanda's meal kit deliveries, Kyle's luxury gym membership, my mother's fashion box subscriptions, my father's rare book club. Each email was professional and direct, requesting immediate cancellation or transfer information. The investment portfolio transition was more complex. I scheduled a meeting with Jackson, explaining that I needed to transfer management of my family's accounts. "That's a significant portfolio," he said, reviewing the numbers. "May I ask why you're transferring it?" "These accounts have performed exceptionally well under your management." "Personal reasons," I said simply, "but I'll help with the transition." I've prepared detailed documentation of all holdings, strategies, and family preferences. Jackson, ever the professional, nodded. I'll take good care of them. Will you continue managing your personal investments through us? Absolutely. This change only affects the family accounts. I spent the next day creating comprehensive financial summaries for each family member, detailing exactly what I had managed for them, what changes were being made, and what actions they would need to take going forward. I was being more generous than necessary, but I wanted to be absolutely beyond reproach. This wasn't about leaving them financially stranded. It was about removing myself from the equation. As I worked, notifications began appearing on my phone. Subscription services confirming cancellations. The bank verifying the credit line closure process had begun. The real estate agent sending the signed acceptance of the cabin offer. With each notification, the reality of what I was doing became more concrete. After years of being the reliable, accommodating family financial manager, I was asserting boundaries. It felt terrifying and liberating in equal measure. That evening, while preparing dinner, I received the first confused text from Amanda. Hey, something weird happened with my meal delivery. They're saying the payment method is invalid. I didn't respond immediately. This was just the beginning. The next morning brought the closing documents for the cabin sale. I reviewed each page carefully before signing, remembering the day I'd purchased it. How excited I'd been to surprise the family with a place that could bring us together. How naive I'd been. As I signed the final page, transferring ownership to the young couple who'd fallen in love with it sight unseen, I felt a weight lifting. The property that had symbolized my desperate attempt to buy family approval was no longer mine. The proceeds would be transferred to my personal account within days. By the end of the week, most of my plan had been executed. The cabin was sold. The credit line was closed. Subscription services were canceled. Investment portfolio transition was underway. I'd done everything methodically and legally, documenting each step to protect myself from potential accusations. I hadn't heard directly from my parents or Kyle yet, though Amanda had sent several increasingly irritated texts about various subscriptions. I knew it was only a matter of time before the full impact hit. Them. That Saturday night, 1 week after the brunch, I made myself a simple dinner, opened a bottle of good wine, and settled on my balcony with Luna. The spring evening was mild, the city lights beginning to twinkle as dusk fell. I felt strangely peaceful, despite knowing the storm that was about to break. As if on cue, my phone lit up with a notification, then another and another. The family group chat was suddenly exploding with activity. I took a sip of wine and opened the messages. The reckoning had begun. The first message in the family group chat was from Kyle. Did anyone else's gym membership get canceled? They're saying something about payment verification. Before anyone could respond, Amanda chimed in. All my subscriptions are canceled. Netflix, Hulu, even my meal delivery. What is happening? My father, typically reserved in group chats, then wrote, Diana's wine club delivery was refused today. Something about payment method no longer valid. Then my mother. The housekeeper said her last direct deposit didn't go through. Rebecca, are you seeing these messages? There seems to be an issue with the accounts you manage. I watched the conversation unfold without responding, sipping my wine as the confusion turned to frustration, then to dawning realization. Amanda, wait, Becca. Did you cancel our shared subscriptions? Kyle, Rebecca, call me ASAP. There's something wrong with the family credit line. I set my phone aside and looked out at the city skyline. 3, 2, 1. My phone rang. Mother. I let it go to voicemail. It rang again immediately. Father this time. Again, to voicemail. The group chat continued to explode with messages ranging from confused to demanding. I felt oddly detached from it all, as if watching a movie about someone else's family drama. After the 5th call in 10 minutes, I decided to send a simple text to the group. I've made some changes to the financial arrangements I previously managed. Nothing illegal or improper has been done. I'll explain everything next weekend. That unleashed a new torrent of messages. Kyle, what changes? Why wasn't this discussed with the family first? Amanda, you can't just make decisions affecting all of us without consultation. Mother, Rebecca Carter, call me this instant. The irony was almost laughable. Suddenly, my input was essential, my presence required, my decisions critically important. The very people who had dismissed me now demanded my immediate attention. I turned off notifications for the group chat and returned to my wine and the peaceful evening view. The true bombshell hadn't even hit yet. Sunday morning brought the next wave. I was enjoying a quiet breakfast when my phone lit up with a call from Uncle Richard. Curious about what he might say, I answered. Rebecca, he barked without preamble, what the hell is going on with the cabin? Frank Matthews next door says there's a young couple measuring for curtains. Says they told him they just bought the place. I took a calm sip of my coffee. That's correct. The sale closed on Friday. There was a moment of stunned silence before he exploded. You sold the family cabin without discussing it with anyone? Have you lost your mind? It was my cabin, Uncle Richard, purchased with my inheritance. Titled solely in my name. I was free to sell it as I wished. But that's the family vacation property. Your parents are planning to spend July there. Kyle's kids love that place. Yes, I know. Everyone enjoyed using my property. Unfortunately, things change. This is absolutely unacceptable. Your mother will be furious. I imagine she will be, I agreed pleasantly. Goodbye, Uncle Richard. I ended the call and blocked his number. Something I should have done years ago. Within minutes, my phone was buzzing constantly. Calls from my parents, Kyle, Amanda, various extended family members, text messages ranging from confused to threatening, emails demanding explanations. I spent the day in peaceful activities, visiting my favorite bookstore, having lunch at a quiet cafe, taking a long walk along the harbor. My phone continued to buzz with notifications, which I steadfastly ignored. By evening, the tone of the messages had shifted from angry demands to worried inquiries, and finally to grudging requests for conversation. My mother's latest voicemail almost sounded concerned. Rebecca, we haven't heard from you all day. We're worried. Please call us back so we can discuss whatever is bothering you. I smiled at the familiar manipulation tactic. In my mother's world, any action that inconvenienced her must stem from someone else's emotional problem, never from her own behavior. Monday morning brought professional consequences. I received a carefully worded email from Jackson. Rebecca, I've been contacted by your father regarding the family portfolio transition. He seems quite surprised by this development and has expressed concerns about proceeding without family consultation. Given our firm's commitment to clear communication with all parties, could we schedule a meeting to ensure everyone is aligned? I replied with equal professionalism. Jackson, as we discussed, I am the authorized manager of these accounts and have full legal authority to transfer their management. My father has no official role in these decisions. Please proceed as planned. If you're uncomfortable with this arrangement, I understand, but I'll need to transfer the accounts to another advisor immediately. His response came quickly, backpedaling. No need for that, Rebecca. We value your business greatly. I'll continue as instructed. Throughout the day, the family's approach evolved. Text messages offering to hear me out and understand my concerns. Voicemails suggesting family therapy. Even an email from my father proposing a business meeting to discuss reorganizing family finances in a way that recognizes your contributions. By Tuesday, desperation was setting in. My mother sent a message that almost sounded like an apology. Rebecca, if this is about what was said at brunch, I may have spoken too harshly. You know how I can be before my second mimosa. Please call so we can sort this out. Kyle, always pragmatic, cut to the chase. Becca, whatever Mom said, we can work through it, but I need access to the investment accounts ASAP. I'm closing on a new vacation property next week and was counting on those funds. I felt a pang at that. Kyle was purchasing a vacation property, something that would never have occurred to anyone when I owned the cabin. It perfectly illustrated my place in the family hierarchy. The real crisis hit Wednesday evening when my father called from an unknown number, which I answered without recognizing it. Rebecca, he said, his voice uncharacteristically agitated. The family credit cards are being declined everywhere. Your mother was at Nordstrom and had to leave her purchases behind. This has gone far enough. I closed the shared credit line, I confirmed calmly. As I was the primary account holder, that was my right. But why? What possible reason could you have for disrupting the entire family this way? I took a deep breath. Do you remember Sunday brunch, Dad? When Mom said you were just being nice, including me, and that I shouldn't think I matter. Do you remember what you said in my defense? There was a long silence. Nothing, I continued. You said nothing. You've never said anything when she dismisses me. So now I'm removing myself from the equation. No more financial management. No more cabin. No more shared expenses that I track and organize while being treated like an afterthought. Rebecca, you're overreacting. Your mother speaks without thinking sometimes, but this isn't about one comment. It's about a lifetime of being valued for what I provide rather than who I am. I'm done with it. We need to discuss this as a family. We will. Sunday at noon, my condo. I'll send calendar invites. With that, I ended the call. That night, as I prepared for bed, my phone lit up with one final message. It was from Aunt Patricia. I heard about everything. For what it's worth, I think you're incredibly brave. Whatever happens Sunday, remember that standing up for yourself is never wrong. I smiled, grateful for the small validation, and turned off my phone. The stage was set for Sunday's confrontation. I needed to prepare. I spent the days before the family meeting preparing both my home and myself. I cleaned my already tidy condo to perfection, ordered a selection of pastries from the same bakery I'd brought to that fateful brunch, and arranged seating in my living room that would allow me to face everyone directly. Mentally, I rehearsed what I wanted to say, consulting with my therapist in an emergency session on Friday afternoon. Remember, Dr. Lewis said, they'll try to minimize your feelings, reframe the narrative, and possibly attack your character. Stay focused on the specific behaviors and your boundaries going forward. What if they refuse to acknowledge any wrongdoing? I asked. Then you have valuable information about whether reconciliation is possible, she said gently. You can't control their response, only your own actions. Sunday arrived bright and clear. At precisely noon, my doorbell rang. I took a deep breath, smoothed my simple but elegant navy dress, and opened the door. They had come as a united front, mother, father, Kyle, Amanda, even Uncle Richard. Aunt Patricia stood slightly apart, giving me a small, encouraging smile. Please come in, I said, stepping aside. Thank you for coming. They filed into my living room, taking in the carefully arranged seating, the coffee service, the pastries displayed on my grandmother's silver tray, a deliberate reminder of my connection to the family legacy. Well, my mother said, looking around with barely concealed disdain, you've certainly gone to some trouble. I believe this conversation deserves proper attention, I replied evenly, gesturing toward the seating. Please make yourselves comfortable. They arranged themselves on my sectional sofa while I took the armchair opposite, creating a natural focal point. I noticed they sat in their usual family configuration, parents central, Kyle next to Amanda beside Mom, Uncle Richard on the periphery. My father cleared his throat, clearly planning to take charge, as he always did at family meetings. Rebecca, we're here to discuss the concerning actions you've taken recently. Selling property, closing accounts, canceling services. Before we get to that, I interrupted calmly. I want to address why those actions were necessary. My mother sighed dramatically. If this is about what I said at brunch, I've already told you I spoke too hastily. This isn't about one comment, I said, echoing what I'd told my father on the phone. It's about a pattern of behavior that has existed my entire life. What pattern? Kyle asked, seemingly genuinely confused. You've always been included in family events. Included? Yes. Valued? No. I looked around at each of them. I've spent years managing the family finances, creating systems that save everyone time and money, handling complex portfolios and tax strategies that would cost hundreds of thousands to outsource. And yet, when important decisions are made, like planning a family trip to Europe, I'm an afterthought. That's not fair, Amanda protested. The Switzerland trip was centered around Kyle's conference. It made sense for the whole family to go except me. I finished for her. Despite the fact that I managed the accounts that would fund that trip, despite the fact that I arranged the lease on the jet you planned to use. Uncomfortable silence fell over the room. Rebecca, my father said in his reasonable businessman voice, we all appreciate the financial work you do for the family. Perhaps we haven't expressed that adequately. This isn't about appreciation, Dad. It's about respect. About being treated as an equal member of this family, not just the convenient money manager. Of course, you're equal, my mother said dismissively. Don't be so sensitive. Uncle Richard snorted. Equal, Diana? You literally told her she doesn't matter at brunch last Sunday. All eyes turned to him in surprise. Even he seemed startled by his own words. What? he said defensively. I'm just saying what happened. I was there. My mother's face flushed. I did not say she doesn't matter. I said, you said you were just being nice, including me, and that I shouldn't think I matter to the decision-making in this family. I finished quietly. Uncle Richard laughed. Dad said nothing. Kyle looked uncomfortable, but stayed silent. Amanda studied her nails. You left out the context, my mother insisted. We were discussing a specific trip. The context is my entire life, Mother, I interrupted. The context is being valued for what I provide rather than who I am. The context is watching Kyle and Amanda receive recognition and inclusion while I'm treated as an afterthought. The context is Dad never once standing up for me when you dismiss me. My father shifted uncomfortably. Rebecca, family dynamics are complex. They certainly are, I agreed, which is why I've simplified mine. The cabin was legally mine, and I sold it. The credit line was in my name, and I closed it. The subscriptions were on my cards, and I canceled them. The investment portfolio I've managed for years is being transferred to another advisor. But why? Amanda demanded. Why punish everyone for one comment? I'm not punishing anyone. I'm establishing boundaries. I'm no longer willing to provide financial services to people who don't respect me. This is about money? Kyle asked incredulously. You're holding the family finances hostage because your feelings were hurt? I looked at him steadily. No, Kyle. This is about recognizing that I deserve basic respect, something this family has consistently failed to give me. So, what do you want? My father asked pragmatically. An apology? More acknowledgement of your contributions? What will it take to restore the previous arrangements? The question revealed so much. Not, how can we repair our relationship with you, but how can we get back the financial services you provided? I don't want anything, I said simply. I'm not negotiating. I'm informing you of changes I've already made. I've prepared individual folders for each of you with complete documentation of your financial situations, recommendations for moving forward, and contact information for excellent financial advisors who can replace my services. I retrieved the folders from my desk and distributed them. Everything is organized and clear. You'll find this transition much smoother than you might expect. My mother left her folder unopened on the coffee table. This is ridiculous. We're family. Families don't keep score or charge each other for help. You're right, I agreed. Families should support each other out of love, not obligation. They should value each member equally, not just for what they can provide. They should defend each other when someone is being mistreated. I looked around the room. I've spent years trying to earn my place in this family. I bought the cabin hoping it would bring us together. I managed the finances hoping my expertise would be valued. I organized, simplified, and supported everyone's goals and dreams while my own were treated as secondary. I'm done trying to earn what should be freely given. So, you're just, what? Cutting ties with the family? Kyle asked, genuine concern finally showing in his expression. No, I said gently. I'm establishing the conditions under which I'm willing to be part of this family going forward. I will no longer manage anyone's finances except my own. I will no longer provide free financial consulting. I will attend family events only when I'm genuinely wanted, not as an obligation. And how are we supposed to know when you're genuinely wanted? My mother asked sarcastically. It's actually quite simple, Mother. Invite me because you want my company, not because you need something from me. Ask my opinion because you value it, not as an afterthought. Defend me when I'm disrespected, even if it's uncomfortable. My father, ever the businessman, seemed to be calculating losses and gains in his head. And if we meet these conditions, then we can build a healthier relationship, one based on mutual respect rather than utility. Aunt Patricia, who had remained silent until now, spoke up. I think what Rebecca is asking for is completely reasonable. We should all reflect on how we've treated her. My mother shot her a withering look, but said nothing. The meeting continued for another hour, cycling through predictable stages. Denial. We've always treated you as part of the family after everything we've done for you. Bargaining. What if we include you in the trip planning going forward? And finally, reluctant acceptance that the financial arrangements had indeed changed permanently. As they prepared to leave, my father lingered behind the others. I should have spoken up, he said quietly, at the brunch and many times before. I'm sorry, Rebecca. It was the first genuine moment of the entire confrontation, and it caught me off guard. Thank you, Dad. I don't know if things can go back to the way they were. They can't, I interrupted gently. But maybe they can be better than they were. He nodded thoughtfully and joined the others waiting by the elevator. As I closed my door, I felt exhausted, but strangely peaceful. For the first time in my adult life, I had stood up for myself without backing down, without accepting half measures, without compromising my worth for family approval. Whatever happened next, that victory belonged to me alone. The weeks following the family confrontation brought a predictable pattern of reactions. My mother maintained a chilly silence, communicating only through my father when absolutely necessary. Kyle sent occasional awkward texts, primarily focused on financial questions despite my clear boundaries. Amanda vacillated between angry messages and attempts at normal conversation, as if nothing significant had happened. My father, surprisingly, made the most consistent effort. He called once a week, keeping the conversations brief but respectful, asking about my work and life without bringing up the financial changes or family drama. These calls were stilted at first, but gradually developed a comfortable rhythm. We talked about books we'd read, current events, even memories from my childhood that I'd almost forgotten, fishing trips just the two of us had taken, science projects he'd helped with late into the night. I was thinking about that model solar system we built when you were in 4th grade, he said during one call. You were so determined to get the proportions exactly right. Stayed up until midnight calculating everything precisely. You helped me, I reminded him. You could have just told me to go to bed, but you sat there helping me measure and cut and paint. You always did have a mind for numbers, he said with what sounded like genuine pride. Even then, these small moments didn't erase years of standing by while my mother diminished me. But they offered a glimpse of what might be possible with time and effort on both sides. The family finances reorganized without my involvement. My father hired a wealth management firm at considerable expense. Amanda complained about the fees in a text, apparently forgetting I had provided those same services for free. Kyle hired his own financial advisor, sending me a grudging message acknowledging that he hadn't realized how much work went into all this stuff. 2 months after our confrontation, Aunt Patricia invited me to lunch at her favorite restaurant. You've caused quite the upheaval, she said as we settled at our table. Diana is still fuming about the cabin. I imagine she is, I replied, opening my menu. Thomas is different though, she continued, more reflective. I overheard him telling Richard that he'd failed you as a father. That's not something I ever expected to hear from your dad. I looked up surprised. He said that. Patricia nodded. The family dynamics are shifting, Rebecca. Slowly, but they're shifting. You standing up for yourself forced everyone to examine patterns they've taken for granted for decades. I thought about this as we ordered our meals. I didn't do it to change them. I did it to protect myself. I know. That's why it's working. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. I should have stood up for you more over the years. I'm sorry I didn't. You were in a difficult position yourself, I acknowledged. Mom never made it easy for anyone who married into the family. We spent the rest of lunch catching up on her children's lives, my work, and the book club we'd both joined. It felt natural and warm in a way family interactions rarely had before. As the months passed, I found myself building a different kind of life without the constant demands of managing family finances. I had time to explore interests I'd neglected. I took a pottery class, joined a hiking group, and volunteered at a financial literacy program for underserved communities. I developed deeper friendships, no longer canceling plans to handle family financial emergencies. My friendship with Stephanie strengthened as we met weekly for dinner or drinks. I grew closer to my colleague Jackson outside of work, discovering shared interests in jazz and contemporary art. My neighbor Emma, whom I'd barely spoken to despite living across the hall for 3 years, became a regular movie night companion. 6 months after the confrontation, my mother finally broke her silence with a text message. Your father's birthday dinner is next Saturday at Le Bernardin, 7 p.m. We'd like you to join us. No demand for financial advice, no guilt trip, no mention of past conflicts, just an invitation. I considered declining, but decided to attend with clear boundaries and low expectations. To my surprise, the dinner was almost pleasant. My mother remained somewhat distant, but made visible efforts to include me in conversations. Kyle asked about my volunteer work with genuine interest. Amanda shared stories from her recent cases without the competitive edge that usually characterized our interactions. "You look well, Rebecca," my mother said as we waited for dessert. "There's something different about you." "I am well," I replied simply. She nodded, something like respect flickering briefly in her eyes. The true test came 3 months later when Kyle's wife, Jessica, gave birth to their second child, a daughter they named Elise. The family gathered at the hospital to welcome the newest member. As I held my tiny niece, Kyle looked at me with unexpected seriousness. "Jessica and I were hoping you might consider being Elise's godmother." I looked at him in surprise. "Really?" "Really," Jessica confirmed from her hospital bed. "You're the most responsible, compassionate person we know, Rebecca. We want Elise to have you as a guide in her life." The request felt significant, not because of any financial implication, but because it acknowledged qualities in me beyond my utility to the family. It recognized my character, my values, my capacity for love. "I'd be honored," I said, looking down at the sleeping infant. Nearly a year after that fateful brunch, I hosted a dinner party at my condo. Around my table sat Stephanie, Jackson and his husband David, Emma, and to many people's surprise, Aunt Patricia and my father. My mother had declined the invitation. Some changes take longer than others, but her absence didn't diminish the warmth of the evening. As we enjoyed dessert and coffee, my father raised his glass. "To Rebecca," he said, who had the courage to teach an old man some new tricks. Later, as guests were leaving, he lingered behind. "I'm proud of you," he said quietly. "Not for your success or your financial acumen, though those are impressive. I'm proud of your strength, your integrity, your willingness to demand the respect you deserve. I should have given that to you really long ago." It wasn't a fairy tale ending. My mother and I maintained a careful, limited relationship. Kyle sometimes slipped into old patterns. Amanda still occasionally made competitive comments. But something fundamental had changed. Not just in how they treated me, but in how I allowed myself to be treated. The cabin was gone, but in its place grew something more valuable: self-respect and genuine connections based on mutual appreciation rather than obligation or utility. I had finally learned that family, true family, isn't defined by blood or shared credit lines, but by respect, support, and love freely given. Sometimes the bravest thing we can do is simply walk away from the table where respect isn't being served. Sometimes the most valuable inheritance isn't money or property, but the courage to say, "I matter." Not for what I provide, but for who I am.